Steelers are back.
Yeah.
We're in our third studio down here in between the classrooms. Kind of a nice setup down here.
Yeah.
I'm TJ Caughell, of course, and special guest today, Reed Sorensen.
Hello, everyone.
Reed, how you feeling?
Feeling good. It's nice being here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we got a dub versus Corbin tonight.
Huge win. Really well battled out there. It's a tough one. Didn't know I was going to end up there at the end there, but you guys held it together. Hit some big shots.
We needed that win badly.
Yeah.
Corbin's good. We've been a little frustrating this year with losing to teams that we don't think we should lose to. The records say that we should beat.
Yeah.
And then coming back and getting wins against good teams. So I guess it's good we're beating the good teams, but it's frustrating to lose to the teams that we should beat.
Yeah. I imagine it's challenging. I can't even imagine, like, with the college, like, transitioning over a roster that you didn't recruit and then bringing in your own guys and then meshing them up with guys that were already here and then making that work. That first year's got to be tough. And so I feel like you guys are doing a really good job transitioning, and at least everything I'm hearing peripherally in the community, people are super excited, and the guys seem to be really bought in and believe in, and that's all you can ask for, I would think. So
that's great to hear what you're saying about the community. It seems like it, but when you're on the inside, sometimes you don't always get a good view of what's going on.
And I mean, and to be honest, like, I've been here 16 years, and SOU basketball hasn't been something that's been highly talked about in the community at times, and it's definitely there's a buzz, so it's kind of cool, and people are real excited to have you and Zozel back in town. And so
nice. Yeah,
I just saw Nate Chin today, and he was talking about it.
Oh, really?
So it's pretty cool. There's hoping for success here.
I don't know the right word. How crazy is it to have Zozel as the head coach here?
Oh, it's awesome. When I heard that Mac was stepping down and I knew Zozel was out there in the ether, I was really hoping he was going to make that run, especially just being with you two in college as your roommate, knowing that you guys, this was like a dream that you all wanted. And I remember when Zozel stole that index that had all the coaches' addresses in it, and he started writing letters to coaches back then.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how he wanted to get back to SOU someday and take Mac's job when he was left, and he made it happen.
Yeah, that's crazy. I forgot about that.
Yeah. And then it was so awesome at Mac's retirement party this summer when you came and you were like, I think I'm going to come out. And you guys made it happen. It was awesome. So it's great to have you guys in town again.
It is great. It's great to be back. It's different.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very different than – I think one of the challenges you guys have, too, is this town is so different than when we were playing. So It's got to be hard to recruit college kids here now. It's a lot harder place to live as a young person. And so
it's much different. Yeah, it is still, in my opinion, the best small college place to be, not just program, but school environment to be in Oregon for sure. I'm not too familiar with California. I'm sure there's some great schools down there, great locations and stuff. But even in Washington, if you're looking Washington and Oregon, this would be my choice.
Yeah,
place to go.
I mean, you step out on the balcony out there and just look into those hills behind the football field, and I mean, it's pretty incredible what you're surrounded by when you're going to school here on a daily basis. And so, that is a good recruiting tool for sure. Selfishly, I was talking more about like the nightlife.
I know.
As a college kid that I was fond of. And so, it's just, I think about what a young person has to do in this town now, and it's really restricted from when we were here.
It's a lot different, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't even know what they would do because I know,
And you've been here basically the whole time, right?
Yeah.
You lived in Medford for a while. Where all have you lived since college?
So right out of college, I got hired at Ashland High School, so that kind of kept me in the valley. But Ashland house prices being what they were, certainly wasn't going to be our first home. And so we, my wife and I, decided to buy, and our first house was in Medford, and so we lived there for a little bit and kind of worked on that house and built that up, and we were able to sell that and find a house in Talent, and then we lived there for 3 years, and then right about a year before the fire happened, we got into Ashland, just kind of fell into place, and we were able to sell our house at a time when the market was really hot, and there was a lot of people with a lot of cash coming up from California, buying houses at a pretty good price. And so we were able to luck out and slide in and get one here in Ashland. And so, so yeah, Talent, Medford, and Ashland. And it's nice to be here and be back. And this was always my wife's and I's goal, Kat, to get back here. And so it was nice to make that happen. So.
Heck yeah, your house is awesome.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, and then that neighborhood right there seems like a great neighborhood for kids too.
Yeah, it's really. I wish there was more kids. That's the only issue
really?
Is that it's a lot of older people, super sweet people. But it would be nice to have a few more kids in the neighborhood for our kids to play with. Because that was one of the challenging things with moving is that Medford, we had an amazing like young neighborhood with a lot of families with kids a similar age, and then we moved to Talent and we moved into like a cul-de-sac that had even a tighter group of people with kids the same age, and so our kids got really tight at both those places with the kids in the neighborhood. And so it was kind of a shock the first year being here, and they didn't have kids to play with right across the street every day, and kind of an adjustment, but they seem to be adjusting well. And so and now that they're older, it's a little bit easier to get out and get to their friends' houses around town. And so
right. Yeah. I remember when we first went, or when we went over to your house, when we got here in the summer, Silas was like riding bikes all over town or something, right? Walking or whatever.
Yeah. And so, he's now kind of branching out. Him and his buddies like to run all over. And now Keely's starting to do that too. And so, it's fun and kind of like, oh my gosh, they're growing up. So it's
that's
kind of
wild,
that existential, like, whoa.
It's got to feel good that you can feel pretty comfortable with them going out and about by themselves at a young age, though, right?
Yeah, that's one of the comforts of this community is, every place has its risks, but I just feel like this still has that small town feel that a lot of places have lost. I still feel like there's a lot of people looking out for young people in this town and care about young people, and there's a lot of people that want to make it a good place for young kids. And so I think it's easy to buffer from any bad that might be around. And so, I feel very fortunate that my kids are growing up here in this community. And the problems here are very different than problems in other places, I think.
Yeah.
And so,
the indicator, it was a lot different than here. It's just, for one, there's the demographics were a lot different as far as socioeconomic. There's a lot bigger division of wealth. I mean, there's a big division of wealth here between the haves and the have-nots, but there's just a lot more haves here than there are have-nots.
Yeah, and the haves here seem to have our openness to helping the have-nots too, and so that's kind of cool too. In the area, one of the coolest things that I've experienced, unfortunately, came right after the fire. And it was just amazing to see the Rogue Valley community come together and support each other. It's sad that it takes a tragedy like that to bring us all together and to show what we're made of. But it was really comforting in the sense that, my wife and I are always talking with wildfires and all these things that are happening in the world, that, where are you going to go? Right.
Yeah.
Like if it's not wildfires, it's floods or political division or it's something bad. Wherever you're going to go, you're going to find something. But how people respond when tragedy happens is really important. And do they run and secure themselves or do they help everyone else? And it was really cool to see this community step up and help each other, and the rapidity at which they were able to mobilize resources to people and the willingness of people from all walks of life to do what they could with what they had was really inspiring and comforting, that if things were to go south, that there's people that will have your back. So, and I know that that's not in every community. So I feel very fortunate again to be in a community that is present. So,
that was a big thing for me moving back here is for Teo and Coy. That's really the number one factor in any decision we were making with what we were doing. And I feel really comfortable having them here. Like people are going to look out for them. Yeah. This is a total tangent, but it seems like we're getting a lot of rain right now. Like it's been a lot of moisture. Is this a typical winter or is this more than normal?
It's weird. It seems more me. I don't remember rain like this. with climate change, it seems like all of this stuff's getting weirder though. Like it seems like it's getting harder and harder to predict it. So I think like the unpredictability is becoming the predictable thing.
Right. Yeah.
So it's, and so, yeah, like our last summer was a bizarre one too. Like I was expecting it to be kind of catastrophic like it had been the last few. And it was actually a beautiful summer in the scheme of things. And so
we had a few fires late, right?
Yeah,
but they weren't too bad.
And they didn't bring that smoke that just comes and sits on us sometimes like we've had in the past. And then it was hard to get past like the year that we had that fire, the smoke that just came and sat on the valley for as long as it did. That was unreal. And that was like apocalyptic. And so everything's been kind of a breath of fresh air since that. And so, but yeah, this rain has been wild. And I haven't been out to Immigrant Lake, but I'm really curious how the lake looks now. Because I've heard Shasta's really doing well. And some of the surrounding lakes are getting a lot of water. So I'm hoping that we're getting that water and we need it. So
it's weird how much I change when I get older. Because I used to be like, I want sun all the time, but every day it rains, I'm just like, keep it coming. More rain. And not to be insensitive, but like watching the news and they're talking about flooding in San Francisco, and I'm like, let it flood. Like, keep coming, you know,
we need
this is
this
going to get stored somewhere.
Oh man, we need it so bad. And we've been without for a few years. And so it's nice to catch up and reach that.
Get that water table up a little bit.
Exactly.
Get the TID to water
flowing
summer. I mean, obviously doing the right thing, but have enough that we can use some would be nice.
Yeah, it would be nice to get people out again, recreating in Ashland on the lakes and doing those things that kind of help our community thrive as it has in the past. And we kind of lost some of that. And so, so that'll be nice to get that back, hopefully.
We talked about changes in Ashland. And I just kind of wondering your insight on the biggest changes. Like some of the things I remember when I came back here to be the assistant coach the first time in 2009, it was clearly different then too. There was more money, I guess, from California, it seemed like. And so there was like more development downtown and it was just a different atmosphere. But it seems like it's just progressed more, more and more. Is that people retiring from California, or people looking for a change in community, or what's changed?
I think a couple things. I think the California housing market, I think, drove it up here because it's such an appealing place to come and live. And I think that people were able to sell their homes for so much down there that when they saw the prices up here in this little gem, they were like, oh, wow. I know the people that bought our house in Talent, sold their house in San Diego for cash that was like thousands of dollars over the asking price. And I was hearing story after story of people getting offers like that on their homes. And so I think it just made it really easy to mobilize. And then COVID happened, which put everybody into kind of the ability to work from home. And so I think that changed the structure of kind of the workforce. And I think that mobilized people and opened up opportunities for people to kind of live in places outside of cities that they might otherwise have been kind of pinned to with their jobs, that kind of allowed them to get to the smaller communities that they might want to live in. And I think that Ashland ended up becoming a place where a lot of people landed during that time.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Is it growing? Do you know?
I don't know if it's growing. I know that the schools are diminishing. So there's a lot of I think the population is staying the same, but I think it's a lot of retirees and people without families.
That's where I was going to go next, because Teo's in Walker. And my dad asked me, well, how big is this class and how many kindergarten classes are there? There's not very many kids. So I know there's 3 elementary schools, but it doesn't seem like there's very many kids.
So I know they're redistricting the elementary schools this year. And so they're going to be dividing the kids up so that they're more evenly spread. But I think they're going to continue to keep the class sizes relatively small, as small as they can, especially at the younger grades. But the idea is that because Walker is one of the ones that was hit the hardest, and so it has the smallest enrollment of the 3 elementary schools. And so it's got the least amount of new development, and it got hit hard when COVID happened because it has family housing in there, and you have a lot of families that are connected to the college. So when the college was online or not in session, a lot of those families weren't renting, and so then some of those kids went away. When open enrollment closed, that limited the number of kids that were at Walker too, because that was they were really one of the schools that benefited from open enrollment. A lot of the kids that were coming from Talent and Medford coming into the district were ending up at Walker, and so that was keeping the population up, and so
that makes sense. He has Miss Julia Kemp. I don't know if you know her, but she's awesome.
Yeah, no, the teachers, in my experiences at Walker, because that's where my kids both went, are amazing. We haven't had an issue with any of them, and they've all been phenomenal. Our kids have loved them all, and so that's one of the things that's been really exciting too, is bringing our kids to school in here, is that they're getting kind of, it seems like that, at least the type of elementary experience I remember I had growing up. And so there's, they still have to follow a lot of the stuff, but there's a lot of attempts to bring different culture into the classroom. There's a lot of attempt to kind of buffer from the standardized tests, or to displace importance just on the tests. And so they still take the tests and those sorts of things, but it's not the highest priority, which that's what I was looking for. And I was looking for a school with my kids that didn't prioritize standardized tests over their development as human beings.
Yeah, they seem like really well connected across the campus. Like all the teachers seem like they communicate and like they really support each other. And it seems great. I know Teo's had trouble reading. He's had trouble, like he flips his words around a lot. He's always like written his name backwards, even the letters backwards. So I've always worried he's dyslexic. I don't know.
No, it could be. I think it's more common than we might think. I have a lot of students that end up having dysgraphia or dyslexia, and they don't find out until later on in their educational journey. And it's really liberating for them to find out that's what was going on, and that there's not something wrong with them, right? Because once you find that out, then there's like skill tools and things that you can use, and strategies that you can use that will help pick that up.
There's a lot of highly intelligent, successful people that have dyslexia.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's just one of those things. And reading in general, reading readiness, that's one of the problems with standardized tests, is that it puts everybody into the same box, and that's not how people learn.
Right.
And so I always tell people the best thing you can do with kids is just read to them, have them read, and it doesn't matter what they're reading, as long as they're reading, just keep them reading, and eventually it's going to click at some point if you keep at it. And as a parent, you're reading to them and reading with them. It's going to happen. It may not happen at the pace that some of your friends' kids are, or that his kids in his class are, but just stick with it and trust the process. And they all come into it at different times. And it may end up being that he's a tremendous reader because he takes his time getting into it. And
right.
So,
Right. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. I try and he only wants to do things that he cares about, that he's interested in. So I try and give him reasons why it's good to read, and like try and give him stuff that's good to read. But
that's just like my daughter.
She's
the exact same way. My son's the pleaser. He kind of will do the things that I ask him to do, but my daughter, she needs to come to that realization on her own. That's what she should do.
Exactly. How old are your kids?
Silas is 13, and then Keely is 11. So 5th grade and 7th grade. So fun ages.
Were you in the delivery room when?
I was.
Silas is 13, Keely's 11.
Yeah.
So he said you were in the delivery room with
for
Silas?
Both. Yeah. It was.
What was that like?
Wild. I was not ready for it. I gained an entirely new appreciation and respect for my wife. Yeah.
Not ready in which way?
Just for what that fully entailed, like just the awesomeness of, people talk about, you don't really know until it happens, until you experience it. And like, it's so cliche, but it's so true. Like I remember just seeing that little person like the first time, and like hearing that cry and watching him breathe for the first time, and then just that like, oh shit moment of like, it's real. And
Yeah.
you're a dad, and what that, the responsibility that comes with that, and the modeling I had with my dad, who is like my biggest hero, and then just thinking about, and now being in it, how much more respect I have for my dad and how effortless and easy he made it look. And I know it wasn't, but just thinking about like how easy he made it look, showing up at all my sporting events and my practices and all these things that growing up, I remember being annoyed because my dad would be at practice and like watching my practices and all these things, and just being embarrassed when I was younger about it. And then realizing not many other dads were doing that. And then, and just how, and then as now that I'm a dad, like how I want to be there, and talking to my son, how he wants me to be there too. And then now how much I appreciate him being there, because I think about now reflecting back on our conversations about practices and about him noticing, like asking me, was that your best effort? And just that helping me to have those reflective times, and keeping me kind of in check on those things, not in a overbearing way. He was never one that ever pushed me or like forced me to go outside and practice when I didn't want to, or any of those sorts of things. But he was always the guy that anytime I asked, though, he was there. It was never, he never made me, but he always would go if I asked him to put whatever he was doing down. Never was too busy to help me or to go out and play catch or to rebound or any of those things. And so, and I just took it for granted. And then now that I'm in it, I'm like,
it's a lot.
Pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. I'm very appreciative of that he did that.
We were really lucky with our parents.
Absolutely. Just those things you take for granted when you're kind of in it, and then you learn to appreciate it as you get older. I think it's Mark Twain that said at 15, I couldn't believe all my parents didn't know, and at 21, I couldn't believe all they had learned. So it's just, you take it for granted, but you realize how much they actually do know, and how much they actually care, and how much they were right on those things that sometimes you thought they were crazy about telling you.
Right. Oh my gosh. They get more right the older we get too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Perspective changes everything.
Yeah.
Like you feel like, I don't want to put anything on anyone else, but I felt like they were so out of touch at so many stages of my life. And it was like, they knew all the right things.
Yeah. They knew the right things to say, and when to say them, and when to lean in, and when to pull back and let you kind of fall and be there to pick you up. And it was there. Yeah. The dance was impressive of how well it was choreographed for them.
Heck yeah. And to provide the resources for you and all those things.
Well, and then just, talking to them and realizing that, like, I didn't grow up with that much money, but I never would have known that. They never made me like realize, like, I never knew anything about our finances or any of that. I never felt like any different than any other kids or anything. And so they just bent over backwards to kind of provide me with experiences that I needed and the things I needed to have success in what I wanted to do. And so if there was a way to make it happen, they found it. And so it was, again, just more appreciation for who they are and helped me to become.
And are they still in your childhood home?
Yep, still back in Grants Pass at the childhood home. Go back and visit them every once in a while. I try to usually see them once a week. They usually come
once a week.
They usually come over here now because it's either my kids have activities or my sister's kids. My sister's back in Ashland working in the Ashland School District, and her husband teaches with me, and so
he coaches football, right?
Yep. Yeah. And so her two kids are in Ashland as well, and so there's a lot going on over here, and so they're over here quite a bit. Every week is probably a little more, probably every other week I get to see them, which is pretty cool.
That's great.
And so
So your kids have a good relationship with them?
Oh, my kids go over there constantly, and in the summer it's one of the things that I really am trying to keep them connected with, because growing up I didn't have grandparents. I think all my grandparents were dead by the time I was 7 or 8. So by the time I was my grandpa was alive until I think I was 11, but he was really sick, and so it was and he lived down in San Bernardino, so it was hard to see him. And so it was
Mhm.
maybe once a year I got to see him, and he wasn't very mobile at that point by the time I was really cognizant, like aware of what was going on. And so it's one of the things I really have wanted to create for my kids is that relationship with their grandparents. And they have really good relationship with my parents, and they have a really good relationship with Kat's parents. They're just in Virginia, but they come out and we get to see them 2 or 3 times a year. They usually come out twice,
nice.
and then we fly back there once a year. And so
Yeah.
try to make as much effort as we can. And then Kat's brothers, my kids' uncles try to come out once a year if they can, or at least once every other year. And so they try to keep them as connected as we can to that side of the family as well. And so
Yeah, that can be hard.
yeah, it's tough. I have a nephew over in Virginia, and I don't get to see him. And every time I see him, he's that much bigger, and it's wild.
It's a big jump every time.
Yeah,
We're doing that dance all the time because we were in Illinois for
Yeah.
a couple of years, and it was fun, but it was also really nice to have the family there every day, and moving back here, my parents are close, but it's still, we don't see them that often.
Yeah.
Once a month if we're lucky.
Mhm.
And so we were able to have the time in Illinois with them and
Yeah.
seeing them every day, and they're really supportive and great, Tim and Wanda. But now being here, we don't see them as often, and it's just life, I guess. But
Yeah.
I wish we could see everyone more.
It's weird too, because I spent a year and a half of my life on Zoom, and I don't know if it's like an aversion and pushback to that, but it seems like with the technology we have, it'd be easier to FaceTime. And I don't know, there's something weird, like we don't end up getting to FaceTime that much, but we do talk on the phone. But it seems like it seems like that's a tool that we could use more, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't feel the same.
It's not the same.
Yeah, it's not the same.
It's not.
Yeah.
And growing up, I was always an adventurer, wanted to go off and do stuff and be by myself and do that. Yeah. But now it's like, I hope my kids are ready to live in the same house with me forever.
Yeah.
We're doing multi-generational.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, probably not, but I would be totally fine with it. Like, I'm fine following them to college and like doing all that. It's crazy. It's crazy being a dad.
Oh, it's wild. It's interesting because Silas, being in middle school, is like with sports and stuff. It's that he's starting to enjoy sports and he's getting into it, and they're starting to like do AAU and all-stars in baseball, and so it's all starting to getting a little bit more serious. And so it's fun, but it's also now it's like I don't want to be that dad.
Yeah.
that it's that really hard one, that delicate dance of like I don't want to be that overbearing parent and push it on, and I don't want to make him want to like the things that I liked. I want to come to him himself if he wants to, and then on there if he wants it. But I always ask him after his basketball games, it's like, do you want dad or do you want coach? And it's like, do you want the sugar or do you want the salt? And
what does he ask for usually?
Both. And he usually asks for dad first.
Yeah.
That's a great game, buddy. You did awesome.
You did great. You went hard. Yeah.
And but like it sucks because as like a coach, I'm looking at what's going on, and so I have to remember sometimes to like.
I can see that.
He doesn't need to know that stuff.
Yeah.
Unless he wants to know it. And so as you get into that too, that's just something that I know has been a challenge, like as a parent and as an athlete and a competitor is like, and then, just it almost have to like check out so that I'm not involved. I'm not involved. And so, I don't coach him. I coach his team. I get to watch it from the stands, but that's harder.
Is it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
we've both been coaches. So, those parents that make it more difficult, not just for you as the coach, but make it more difficult for their kid.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be that parent that's making it more difficult for your kid or, putting them in a bad position with the coach or something like that.
Absolutely. And it's, it's such a delicate line of advocating for your kid, but then also being a detriment to a team. And so, you always have your kid's best interest at heart, and all parents have their kid's best interest at heart, as they should.
Yeah.
But as a coach, you're responsible for 11, 12, 13 other people's kids as well. And so it's that perspective that's hard. And so.
Yeah, I could imagine if it was a bad coach. You know what I mean? Because like if my kid was being coached really poorly, I'm not sure how I would react.
Mhm.
Because I mean, I've been a bad coach, I'm sure, at a lot of different
Yeah.
times, but most of the people I'm around are pretty good coaches.
Yeah,
You know,
that's our experience too.
I
And so,
grew up around good. I had good coaches growing up. I had good
Yeah.
coaches in high school. I had, good coaches basically all the way through. So you understand that there's going to be differences in perspective, and it's all about the team, and
Yeah.
you want to be. But I could only imagine if my kid had a coach who obviously didn't know what they were doing, or was,
Yeah.
being disrespectful or something. Like that would be a really hard position to be in.
Yeah, I feel really fortunate that I feel like Ashland has a pretty good group of parents that end up stepping up and coaching, and so it's been good. He's had a lot of fun so far in this community, so that's been nice.
Like it, yeah. I wanted you to call someone out. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
no, I'm just kidding. But you've been coaching Ashland High School for a while now.
Yeah.
How many years?
Well, I started out my first year teaching. When I was student teaching, I started coaching at Ashland back in 05, 06. And then I coached for probably 4 years, 5 years then. And then when Silas was born, after he was like 1 or 2, I think 2, I took off until probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and then started coaching again and just focused on figuring out how to be a dad. And then came back into it when Sam got the job at Ashland, Sam Osowski. And then he asked me his first couple years if I was ready to come back, that there was a job waiting when I was ready. And then that third year I felt like it was ready. And so came back and tried it out. And it was awesome because my first group that I coached just graduated last year when I came back with Sam. And then this group of seniors that we have this year was like my first like squad that I got to coach. That like I've got to coach.
Because you had the freshman team, right?
Yeah, I had the freshman team at that time, and then I moved up to JV the next year, so I got to transition with these guys, and so I got to coach them again. And so I've known these guys and got to see them grow from a really young age, and it's just been really fun to see them kind of just come together and mature as players and as young men, and just aside from basketball, I'm just so proud of like the humans that they've become. They're just such caring and such good kids. I mean, it's reflected in the fact that they won the sportsmanship last year at the state tournament.
Oh, awesome.
I mean, the coolest thing is everywhere we go, it isn't about basketball. It's about how respectful they are. And we go into restaurants on road trips or at hotels, and people are commenting, strangers are coming up to us and just talking about how respectful they are, and just how they're appreciative of seeing teenagers and young people that are that way, and that because they don't have that experience necessarily all the time. And so it's been really fun coaching these guys, and it's been really cool to see them get to have some success. And I know they've worked really hard to try to put themselves in a place where they can have success, and it's nice to see it kind of paying off.
You see all the inside of it, everything that they're doing, all the extra hours that they're putting in.
Yeah, I have a couple of the kids that, I mean, I opened the gym probably 100 hours this last summer for them to shoot and just go through workouts and just help them kind of figure out what they wanted to do. And they are in at 6 a.m. putting up shots on their own, unprovoked. And so it's just, they just want to do it. And, one of them hits a game winner last night, biggest shot of his life. And the first thing he asked me is if the gym's going to be open today.
Are you serious?
Yeah, look at him, you sicko, go celebrate. But that's the type of kid he is. And it's just, and then it's infectious because he's influenced other kids and kind of raised that bar of like, this is what we do. And so he's got other kids in his class in there doing that. And so now it's 2 or 3 of them that are the seniors, which they brought in a couple of the juniors that are doing that, and some of the sophomores and the freshmen. So it's kind of trickled down in the program, and kind of that level of work and that level of commitment is amongst the kids that are really wanting it, or is becoming kind of the norm, which is cool. And then
That's how you build a good program.
Yeah, and the little guys, the 7th, 8th graders are seeing these kids, the guys in at the Y after they've gone through practice at the high school, and they're getting shots up and are getting lifts up after they've gone through a full practice, and they're starting to notice and see that, and so it's been really cool to kind of see. And it's the senior class has been really influential in kind of shaping and kind of transitioning us and taking our program from point A to point B of who we want to be.
Yeah.
And so it's been really fun.
And that was Izzy that hit the shot last night.
Yeah, Izzy Golden.
Yeah. And I remember when I first moved back, you were like, you need to watch this kid. He's good. He's been getting a lot better.
Yeah, I hope he gets a shot at some point at some level to see what he can do, because he definitely has the drive. He has the work. He's a special shooter, and I think he'll get there. He wants it, and so.
That's a tribute to the whole community, but you guys as a coaching staff, his parents, the whole environment, like the youth coaches, everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a village, right? But his parents are phenomenal in supporting him and his dreams, and doing whatever they can to make it happen, and him having the motivation to get up at 5 a.m., 6 a.m. to come meet me. And it's just awesome to see.
How old is he?
He's a senior, and then
17, 18?
I think he's 18, maybe. I'm not sure. 17, 18.
Was he born here?
Not sure. I think he was, but I'm not sure exactly if he was born here or not. I know he went to school here in elementary school and through middle school and stuff.
He did.
So he's not like a transfer in during high school or in middle school.
Yeah.
So, but it's been really fun to see him, and then we got a lot of really fun guys to coach this year. I mean, it's a really fun team to be a part of. Constantly I'm laughing, smiling. If I had hair, I'd be pulling it out at times. They make us frustrated, but man, they are fun group to be around. And so they make the job pretty easy. So,
when we were in college, your hair was nice. It was long.
It was nice and lush. Well, I got married and had kids and started teaching.
No, I could tell just the way when you sent me that text, I could just tell how passionate you were about him making that shot. Like it was a big deal. I could tell that he's a kid that you really care about. Yeah.
I mean,
awesome.
He's one of, there's a handful of those guys that I'm real excited that just to see them, like I said, go from that freshman year. And Izzy's story is really cool to me because their freshman year, we had to move some of them up as freshmen to JV. And Izzy was the only one in that group that didn't get a move up because he was little. And they physically he just couldn't hang at the JV level yet. But he still was a tremendous shooter, and he was heartbroken when I had to break that news to him. And I just remember having that conversation with him that this is going to be a really good opportunity for him to be a leader, because now he gets to shoot the ball every single time he touches it. And that he's going to have to be the leader that goes and gets the shots, that he didn't have to do that with those other kids. And he had a couple lumps that he took, but by the end of the season, he had embraced that, and it had really helped transition and grow his game. And then the next year as a sophomore, he just stepped in and with that group and was seamlessly in there. And now he's probably the strongest of all of them. He's a hard worker. And so it's been really cool to see.
So that was best for him that he had to stay back
and
go through some adversity.
I think it was a bitter pill to swallow, but I think in hindsight, I think it worked itself out for him.
Who has any real success without going through some serious failure?
Yeah, absolutely. Adversity is a necessary thing, I think.
Yeah. And so what's it looking like? That was against Thurston, right?
That was against Thurston.
And that was a conference game?
That was our first league game.
That
was a big one there. I think they were a top 10 team in the state at the time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And they had been beating some good schools so far. They had a pretty good record going into it. And so it was nice to be there to get them at home, especially our league is so tough, top to bottom. There's no easy wins. Even the teams you're supposed to beat any given night, they could show up and give you a problem and surprise you. And so it's one of those leagues that we just beat ourselves up and end up just like where there's even the best teams in the league every night are in dogfights. And so it's really fun league to be part of.
So kind of like the Cascade Conference.
Absolutely. Yeah. It reminds me a lot of the Cascade Conference. And
So what's that? What does our preseason poll? What's it looking like moving forward? What were you guys projected?
Well, so projected, I don't put much greed into preseason polls at all because
they don't mean anything.
They don't mean anything. Our preseason poll, we were picked to be pretty high because going into the season, we had a 6'10" center that was projected to probably be the 5A vie for 5A player of the year. He was. Yeah, he was. He had the potential to probably get that award. But Egan. Egan, and then he decided to go to Colorado Prep and a prep school out in Colorado this season, and so we lost him. And so a lot of the preseason rankings were done with thinking he was going to be part of our team, and so then that's been another big challenge going into the season was having to make that adjustment from your offense and your whole concept of team being built around a 6'10" big man. And so like all of a sudden it's like, all right, now we got to change how we're going to look because we're a bunch of guards, right? And so it's been good for the guys because they have really high expectations of themselves. We took some L's against some really good teams, which was really frustrating for them because they have such high expectations from themselves, which is really good.
But those, you're talking the out-of-state tournaments you were playing.
Out-of-state, right? We've lost to some 6A schools that are really big and physical, and we were in all those games and had chances to win, but we just couldn't get over the hump. And so for the guys to keep the mental edge and not to get frustrated with those L's and to still believe in our system and in themselves, and then to come out against Thurston and to get that win in the way that we did, it was really nice to see because we got over the hump finally. And so it was a huge thing for our program, I feel like, this year, just to kind of let them get that taste of, all right, this is why all that hard work and all that pain and all that stuff you guys have gone through up to this point, the method behind the madness was right here. And so
it's easy to say, we're going to be good. We have confidence. We believe in ourselves. But until you actually do it, it's not always real. Right?
And learning how to win, people grossly underestimate learning how to win. People think it's easy to just go out and win. And especially if you haven't done it, or if you have had a habit of losing for a while, you have to learn how to win and how to get over the hump and how to hold a team from coming back. And so I feel like we're learning that in the preseason, and we'll see moving forward. But I feel like that was a huge step forward last night as our program. And I'm super excited because we get to follow it up with our rival Crater on Tuesday at their place.
And so on Tuesday.
It's going to be an awesome game, and they're, I think, number 6 in the state, so it's going to be awesome.
7:00.
Yep. So 7:00 tip off. It should be a barn burner, as it always is over there in Central Point when we play them. And so I can't wait. Love to go in and compete with these guys, and especially in a dogfight like that's going to be. So
Well, I'm glad Chris Schmierbach's not their head coach anymore, because then I can root against him more easily. I would still be rooting for Ashland either way. I just want to make that clear, but it's easier when he's not there.
It's been really fun having Schmier in the Coach Mac's coaching tree in our conference is pretty wild. So
who else is in there?
I guess not in our conference, but in the Rogue Valley, thinking about like James Whiteman at South Medford, Schmierbach was at Crater, Sam,
Tedder's at North
Medford. I'm an assistant at Ashland. Coach Perkins is an assistant at Ashland.
That's a lot.
So Coach Mac's influence is pretty wide in the Valley. It's been pretty cool to see.
You saw Coach Mac tonight?
I did.
Did you talk to him?
I didn't get to see him. I missed him when I walked in, and he was across the gym. And by the time I got kind of out of the stands and over there, I had missed him. And so, but I got to see him at the last game, and it's always good to see him.
He's always got a crowd around him these days.
He does, He's got quite the entourage. It's awesome.
I'm pretty happy for him, actually, in that respect. Obviously, he's dealing with a lot of, really don't know, difficult, maybe the word help,
Yeah.
with the brain cancer he's going through, but seeing all the love that he's received all around, it's been, from my perspective, which is an easy perspective.
It's inspiring
it's awesome.
Seeing someone facing that level of a challenge, to embrace it and to take it on head on the way he is, and to have the love that he has and to be filled with the love that he is. It is inspiring to see, for sure.
Yeah. What do you do around here for fun?
Man, it's weird. Lately, I've been so plugged into basketball. Most of my free time has been either working Silas out in basketball, or working out the high school guys in basketball, or playing open gyms with guys. Been playing a lot more basketball since this last summer. I had taken some time off from basketball. I don't know why, but I just kind of stepped away from the game for a little bit, and then those kids getting me in the gym every day got me shooting. And then it was really cool before you guys ended up taking over the program through the Y, and because of Izzy and some of the high school guys just working out all the time and their hard work, they got to meet some of the SOU players last year, and they kind of developed a relationship, and some of them started working out and shooting with each other at the Y. And so then when we started having open gyms this summer, Izzy and some of the guys, Seb, asked if we could invite some of the SOU guys for our open gyms. And I said, yeah. And it just kind of snowballed into where more and more people were showing up. And there was nights where we had big runs, and I haven't ever seen in Ashland. And it was super fun.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And just the relationship that was forged between your players and our kids was so valuable for our kids. And just to get out and to get to see college basketball players play, and what that actually means, and how they move without the ball, how they move when they have the ball, those sorts of things were the kids talk about it after we would have those runs. The next day, they'd be talking about the things that they saw, or things that they did against those guys, or what they couldn't do against those guys because they defended it so well and so different than they're being defended. And so it was just such a beneficial thing. And then it got me out there as an old person, running and knocking the dust off. And so that was really fun to get out there and play with those guys. And it's where I got to meet Joe and Brett and Jackson and some of those guys. Trey and all those guys. And so it's been really fun.
That's awesome. Yeah. Takes a village, like you said.
Yeah. And then a bunch of the football players ended up coming out. And so
really?
It was really fun. Yeah, and this spring, hoping to get it back rolling.
We should be able to. Yeah. Right? You're talking SOU football players, right?
Yeah. Yep, the SOU football guys.
I'm starting to meet some of those guys. I'm hoping. I have a couple guys tapped for the podcast these next couple of weeks, football players, to get them on. But it seems like a good group. I hope we end up with a good head coach coming in. I know Sayer's working hard to get the right guy in.
Yeah. They got a big search out, right?
Yeah. They had people on campus. They had, I believe, finalists. I'm not.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm not really on the inside of the hiring. Obviously, I'm not on the committee or anything. But
nice.
I think they had 3 or 4 guys on campus this past week.
Nice.
Yeah. So, say if you're going one-on-one with Siobhan Haynes, how many points do you have to give him to make it a fair match?
10. No, that's probably my favorite guy to play against in the world is Siobhan, and more to play with. But I've been battling that guy since college. He's still around in the Valley, and so we get to play with each other or against each other in City League all the time. It's so fun, and he's one of my favorites.
He came to the game last night, so it was good seeing him.
Yeah, he always puts a smile on my face.
Well, it's crazy because we're old. I'm old. Yeah. I feel old.
Me too.
It hurts me to think about playing, but you guys are still out there draining threes and banging inside. And
the beauty of the game is basketball's gotten a lot softer in that sense, physically, on the body. You don't have to worry about guys chugging you coming across the key. People, especially pickup games, most guys aren't setting shell-shocking screens, and so It's actually easier now as older than it would have been as an older guy playing when we were younger.
You think so?
Yeah. I remember when I first started teaching at Ashland back in the early 2000s, I got invited my first week there. I got invited to a staff basketball game at 6:30 in the morning, and there's a bunch of old guys, and I walk in there and I'm young, and first pass I get in the post, one of the guys just elbows me as hard as he can in the kidney. in the kidney. And I just bam, right in the kidney. And my eyes just kind of fuzz over, and I'm like, whoa. And I have to go outside and I throw up. And,
are you serious?
Oh, yeah.
Who was this?
Rick Cornelius.
And, Rick Cornelius.
Yep. And he lit me up and come back in, and he's like, kidney punch works every time.
He told you that?
Yeah.
What?
And that's when I realized I was in for some prison rules basketball. And so, and I was like, all right, so I got to see how we're going to play physically, but I don't have to worry about that as much now. And so, yeah, guys don't do that as much now. And so it's a little bit softer on the body in that sense.
So no one sets as dirty as screens as you used to set on me in practice?
No. Those were epic. But not as epic as the one I said on Moses. I
remember that. Yeah.
He was cheap shotting you, and so I rocked him and then got kicked out of practice.
Yeah, he I don't think he handled it very well.
No. And we almost got into it.
I appreciate that.
Hey, of course. That's my job.
What do you have any good stories about Zozol's practice habits?
Not that I can say on camera. No, but he is probably if not the toughest competitor I've ever seen and played against. In his level of intensity, it was inspiring. It raised it up, and I feel like he and I together raised it up too. And so we had real intense practices because we both had similar personalities. Neither of us really wanted to back down. We were both real physical, and so we got to push each other. And on any given day, we could have the better of each other, and it was really fun with him, Jeff Tashney, and I.
Yeah,
we had really fun practice battles. I feel like, and those two were obviously much better than I was, but I feel like I got to give it to them every day, which was pretty fun and helped make them better each day. And so then we didn't have the best teams, I guess. We weren't competing for national championship, but we had some really tough people on our team. Yeah, I feel competitively, I feel like we could have competed with almost any team. I would have rolled the ball out against anybody, and we could have been in a game with them. Just on sheer personality and will, I think. We had dogs that were going to do it. And
the game's changed a lot.
The game's changed a lot.
Players are more skilled now. We couldn't shoot with the guy we have on our team right now at SOU. There's no way we could shoot with them. And they wouldn't allow us to play physically the way that we did. But it's interesting, the difference. That's the biggest challenge. As a coach who's seen that transition and been around the game through the transition, started playing in the 80s, right, and all that, and through the 90s, 2000s, and then coached up through now. The game is so much more skilled now, but it's a completely different game than it was when we were playing. Things that were completely illegal or just everybody's doing them now. The step backs would have been a travel without a second question. Euro steps were a travel. There's all these things that Euro is a travel every time
that are just second nature now and part of the game that you never just would have got away with. Just like it was just standard when a guy ran across the key that you just hit him, right? You threw an elbow into their chest and didn't make it easy and made him go behind you. And
that's what you had to do.
You do that now, you might get an intentional foul or thrown out of the game, and I was looking at number 4 out there from Corbin and thinking, God, you guys weren't getting chugged by that dude. That guy was a big man.
That guy he's good too.
Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah, he's got a nice mid-range. He hit a 3, right?
Yeah.
He can shoot the 3.
Big, strong guy.
Yeah.
That's why they don't let guys chug anymore.
No. I think a lot of the rule changes are for the best.
Yeah.
It makes the game.
It makes it more exciting. I think looking at what's going on in the NBA and everything, I think that I do feel like they've probably gone over the line with like too much on the defense, strapping the defense's hands on it. I think guys are too good offensively to play defense without being able to touch them. Like it's why you have multiple dudes scoring 60, 70 points a game. It used to be like we had one.
Right.
And now it's, every week there's a new guy that's lighting it up. And so I think that it's definitely, it has swung definitely into the offense's favor for sure, where I think 80s and 90s, it was in the defense's favor. The defense got away with a lot more. And so I feel as the game continues to evolve, we'll probably see a swing slowly back more towards the middle where they'll kind of figure out that fine line. It'll be interesting to see what they do with like the 3-point line. I'm a real big fan of them introducing a shot clock into Oregon basketball. I think that's going to be awesome for the high school.
Is that next year or the year after?
Next year.
Next year.
Yeah, they approved it for this year, but it goes into effect next year to give schools time to get shot clocks installed and teach people how to use them.
I'm happy about that too.
I think it just better prepares Oregon kids for college. It kills that boring basketball where teams can stall for an entire quarter. I don't know how. I think it's not as prevalent as it once was, but I remember when we were in school, Pleasant Hill winning state championships, just sitting on the ball I remember Tim Frost on our AAU team in the state championship, winning a tip, going down and scoring, and then the team sitting on the ball for the entire rest of the quarter in a state championship game. And it's like, that's not fun for anybody. I mean, you win a state championship, but did you really play basketball?
Tim's senior year, except that was my senior year, I think they played Luke Jackson in the championship game, right? Did you watch that at Corvallis?
I think they played James Tharp in Pleasant Hill.
Oh, is that who it was?
I believe so.
You're right.
Because they had Tharp was a junior on that team, but they had a really good senior
Kevin Cardi.
Yep, that's
Kevin.
Kevin.
Right?
Yeah. See, you guys were in 4A, right?
We were 3A.
That was right. We were all 4A. We were 4A
at
that time. We were 4A at that time. Yeah, and so but and ours was if you were south of Portland, it didn't really matter. There was a couple Eugene schools. Churchill had a squad with Moses and those guys, and then South Eugene with Blake Stepp had a squad. But it wasn't until I think after we graduated that like Sheldon started getting kind of into prominence there. But pretty much it was dominated by Portland. 4A was when we were in high school.
I'm trying to think it. It was all Portland. I'm trying to remember the teams.
But I feel like with you guys, it was like Eugene had the powerhouses like Cresswell, Junction City was really solid.
Peter went to Junction City.
You all were always solid.
But Pleasant Hill had a really good run there. Coach Neer running that delay game that you're talking about. They were really good. And
it was crazy because he was running that delay game with highly skilled basketball players too.
I think he had the most talent in the state. I mean, Tharp and Roger Cardi and Miles Sangaith. You remember Miles, right? And then they had the Melvin twins. They were good.
They were so good. And and to just sit on the ball like that, it's like, man, they could have been scoring buckets.
Jay Call's pissed about this shot clock.
I bet. As an AD at is he still at Reed Sport?
No, he's in Powers.
Powers, Well, okay. So as a former AD of a school, I can imagine like the challenges that it's going to present for some of the schools. And,
I like the shot clock.
I really like it. I think it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. People are always like, it'll like stop that. I think it'll just force people to have a lot more bad shots, which will be really good. Like the bad teams will just shoot a lot of bad shots. But
it's 30 seconds or 35?
35, which is plenty of time.
That's a lot of time. If you can't get a shot off in 35 seconds,
you probably don't deserve to win.
You shouldn't be playing.
You probably shouldn't be winning anyways. It'll be good though because it'll our best possessions are right around 35 to a minute, and we're trying because we run motion, and so and we're trying to get the guys to do that, and so it's sweet because it'll actually make our guys actually have to run the motion precisely and get into their set and get into the attack out of it. And so it'll be nice. It'll be good because I think a lot more teams are going to have to look at using presses and just getting more creative with chewing up that shot clock before
Yeah.
delaying the shot before people can get into their offenses.
Yeah, that's something Zozel took from Oregon is that blue press we do, the soft press. It's it's all just to eat up 6 to 8 seconds on the shot clock. You know?
Just that little bit of time that point guard's got to dribble and turn a little bit, and just that constant leaning on them, making them tired, so that by the fourth quarter, those legs have got that extra little bit on it.
Just a little bit, yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's good.
That's one of the big things that we've tried to emphasize this year is our defensive intensity, because we hadn't been to the state playoffs or state tournament in a while. And so it was really cool last year being up there, but it was very clear that we defended very differently than those schools that are there consistently.
In what way?
They pick up volleyball line opposite side. Volleyball line, their side of the court at the very least, but most of them are picking up volleyball line opposite side of the court, and then blue press. Just that intensity of just being there, and just you got to be ready and on it from that point moving to the basket. You better be paying attention, and so. And
it's smart because defensively, you're not really expelling much extra energy. It's really soft, but if it's a team that's not ready for it, you might steal 2 or 3 possessions a game.
And at that level, when you're at that point in the tournament, those 2 or 3 turnovers can be the big difference between winning and losing. At that point, it's one possession. And so if you can get that one possession and that one time you put it on them.
Yeah. Yeah. Zozel's really good at timing when we do like a track and rotate, or you know what I mean? Because we're always throwing that like soft press on, and 2 or 3 times a game we might trap hard and rotate. And if you get one steal and bucket, I mean that's a big deal.
That is
right. That's a big deal.
It actually was. I was surprised how much zone I've seen from Zoza's teams. Like I wasn't expecting him to be in that zone, but I mean it makes sense. You guys got guys for it, and it's effective, and it's working. But I was expecting Zoza to be hardcore man to man, guy, and occasionally go into it. But
I think that kind of goes back to talking about how the game's different now and how it's officiated different.
Absolutely.
Because you coached with him when he was coaching the freshmen at Phoenix, right?
Yeah, and zone was like a bad word.
Yeah.
Zone was a curse word.
Yeah. Which is basically what Corbin is. Corbin's running that wing denial all the time. They're going to run their man-to-man wing denial the entire game. And now Zoz is like a total switch defenses all the time.
And I bet that's probably his influence from Altman, since he's such a master coach. But I listened to a lot of Old Man in the Three and All the Smoke, like all those different podcasts from those NBA guys. And that's one of the things that they're talking about is they're all kind of talking about this crazy scoring that's happening in the NBA right now. And they were all talking about that it's so hard now. The guys are so skilled offensively that it's so hard that the defenses aren't bad. It's just the guys are so gifted offensively that if you try to run a defense for longer than 3 or 4 possessions, they have it figured out, and it doesn't matter what you're doing. Yeah. If you give them 4 possessions of doing the same defense, they're going to figure it out, and they're going to just continue to get buckets. And so there's a lot more teams that are falling back into that. Let him get his, and we'll try to stop everybody else. And so, they can't score 160 points, but he might get 80.
Well, when you could be more physical, we used to be able to dictate what the offense was doing, and then it's easier to run man and like pressure stuff. And it all depends on the referee crew too, and it changes every game, which makes it really hard. Yeah. But the way it's supposed to be called with the freedom of movement, you're not supposed to be able to chuck anyone that goes through the lane, which makes it really hard to play man all the time.
Yeah. No, I don't know how these teams that are playing man, if you have like officials that are calling it how it's supposed to be called, are able to do it. Yeah. We're running into it too. It's like we've run into a couple of schools, Grants Pass that beat us. Roseburg was real physical that way. And it's just like, we've been trying to coach guys not to do that because we've been getting called for it. And then all of a sudden it's just boom, getting rocked by it. It's just like, old school throwback game.
Right. Yeah. Which is fun. But if you haven't been playing that way, it makes it really hard.
If you have the guys that can respond to it. But a lot of guys now aren't like used to that. And so it's like, what is this? Yeah. So it throws them off of their game. And so that's one of the things to coach that's tough. Like a new thing that's coaching too is like having to coach that physicality because it's not something they're used to. Like,
Yeah.
And so it's something they have to like really learn because they're not growing up playing that way. And so when they run into it, it's like, whoa, what is this?
Yeah, what is this?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like sticking your knees out on screens and
stopping the man at any cost.
Which there's something beautiful about that. There's something fun about that.
Oh yeah. There's some, yeah, there is. I think our practices were always as competitive or more competitive than the games. It felt like I always felt like there was a really good level of competition between the different groups and stuff. And the red and the blacks were always battling it out.
Yeah.
It was cool because it broke up into like houses too, because Tashni's house.
Yeah, it really did,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I never can tell if it's me misremembering or if it, I'm the old guy misremembering how it used to be, but it seems like it was like that.
Oh no, we
More
definitely
physical.
had Game of Thrones too. We had different houses that
Yeah.
that you navigated.
Yeah. Yeah, which made it fun.
Yeah.
So tell me about your the class that you teach at Ashland High School.
I get to teach the 2 alternative programs at Ashland High School. I teach, they're called the Catalyst and the Thoreau program, but they're essentially 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th kind of progression. Some kids are in it for 4 years. Some kids drop in and do it for a year. Some kids just come into it whenever they find it. It works for them. Some kids don't make it through the year because it doesn't work for them.
So the standard is, though, they start as a freshman and
the standard is they can start when they want. Some kids choose to come in as freshmen and they really like it. And so they get to stick with it for 4 years because they just like the style. So essentially I get to have the same 17 to 18 kids, depending on the dynamic of the class and the personalities. But it's capped at that. So I have the same kids for 3-period block. So I have them 2 periods before lunch and then 1 period after lunch. So I have the same kids all day, essentially, on those days. And they're with the same kids in class all day. And I do English, social studies, and science with the 9th and 10th graders. And I do English, government, and an elective with the 11th, 12th. But the 3-period block allows us to get out and do a lot of field trips. And so about every other week, we get out and we do different hikes around in the Rogue Valley, or we go to a farm and we're working on a farm, or we just get them out of the classroom and doing something around here in the Rogue Valley. And the purpose, and it's the field trips are kind of their reward. And so the field trips aren't designed to have, like, they're not out there filling out paper and identifying this or that. Their assignment on those field trips is to be present and unplugged from technology, to be communicating with their classmates and to be like taking in nature around them and like what we have around us and all these different things, and to see these places because we call it like re-indigenizing themselves to the land that they're on. Because once you indigenize yourself and you're part of the land, it's hard. You're more prone to take care of it, right? Yeah. That's kind of our philosophy behind it. And so getting them out, and it's amazing how many kids grow up here and for whatever reason just don't have the opportunity to get out and take advantage of some of the hikes and some of the places that are available to them here. And so it's really cool to get out there with them. We go morel hunting in the spring and work on.
So when you get morels, what do? You make a meal as a class, or
so
you just take
the kids. I take all of them from the kids. No, the kids are. It's pretty awesome. They all get to take them home and cook for some of them take them home and cook for their parents, and their parents being in Ashland, a lot of the families mushroom hunt on their own, and so they have their own spots that they go to, and so they're better at it than I am. But they usually collect them and they'll take them home, or we'll collect them and we'll make like a pasta and we'll eat that as a class. We do feasts as a class and potlucks as a class. It's a pretty cool class. The 9th, 10th grade class, we focus a lot on using nature kind of as a focal point, and we kind of talk about it as being kind of a spiritual thing, in the sense of that it's the thing that can connect all of us that's bigger than ourselves, right? And spirituality being for what the way that we talk about it is the belief in something bigger than yourself, and that it doesn't have to be a religion. It doesn't have to be this. It could be just that you have friends, right? That could be your spiritual practice, right? Is that you put everything into your friends, but the belief that you're part of something bigger than just yourself, so that your thoughts and the way that you carry yourself and act might be according to that. You think about the impact that you're going to have on other people or other things in the earth or whatever it is that you're going to do. And then when we get, and a lot of the kids transition from that 9th, 10th, so they kind of have that foundation. And so the field trips are all an extension of all of that, continue with that. And when they get to 9th and 10th graders, we kind of build the curriculum around Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. And so it's just kind of the idea of the monomyth that all cultures kind of have these stories that follow these same patterns of that someone's called to do something, and then they go through these trials, and at some point they're going to hit an abyss or a really low point in their life. And if they can get through that with the help of mentors and fighting out with whatever problems they're having and get through that, they've transformed. And then out of that transformation, they grow and come back and they get to become a mentor themselves. And so as they enter in and so each year we kind of pick the books that we read to kind of follow that pattern. And so in the first book that we read is usually like a call to adventure book. And then by winter time, we kind of take them down into the abyss where we're talking about darker things. The books are usually heavy and dark. 1 year, we have like a 2-year cycle of the curriculum. And so 1 year, the abyss book is Cormac McCarthy's The Road, which maybe my favorite piece of literature.
I've never read that.
You should read it, especially now that you're a dad.
Yeah.
You will cry.
I bet. I've heard it's
and
amazing,
you'll read it in like a day. It's a super fast read. It's unbelievable. So that's a fictional book. And then on the opposite year, we read Night by Elie Wiesel, which is a really short book, but it's about his survival through the Holocaust with his dad. So it basically is a true story, very similar to The Road. The Road's a story about a father and son, post-apocalyptic, walking across this landscape, surviving together. And then the next year we read about the Holocaust, where they go in and this father and son and their attempt to survive through this and how they endure it, get through it. And the parallels between it are very similar. And so those are the types of things that we focus on, are like when you're in that abyss, like how are people enduring these things? And so then it leads to a lot of discussions. And then tell the kids, you're going to get thrown a lot of stuff, and the hope is that you may find a tool or tools that you can use when you come up against these challenges in life, whether it's your abyss or when you get confronted with the tricksters that are going to try to lead you astray in your life, or when you get to that point when you've transformed from that person you used to be, and then how do you not get stuck there, right? And that kind of that in between, like how do you actualize to that person that you want to become once you kind of started moving in that? And so a lot of discussions around that. It's really cool. I mean, the whole reason I teach, the whole reason I coach, the whole reason I do most everything is about relationships. That's why I do it's my why for teaching. It's my why for coaching. It's all about the relationships that I get to form with the kids and my colleagues. But it's really cool seeing kids come in as 9th graders that are, nervous about high school, or sometimes just total little dingbats, and then completely figure it out by the time they're seniors. Where I played disc golf, and one of my disc golf partners is a kid that I taught in 2010. And so it's like he was in my class, and so we hang out all the time now. And I have a number of kids like in my social media now that I keep tabs on and regularly connect with. That come back and see me and check in with me. And so, I've posted needs for class on things like, trying to get books, updated books for class or something, and put that I need these things. And I'll have X students that'll buy books for me or bring things in and help out with the program. And so it's just kind of cool to see that type of reciprocity coming back. So
that's heavy stuff.
Yeah, I love it. It'd be really hard. The relationships that I get to form with my students, because I get to be with them for 3 periods, and there's only 18 of them. So in those 3 periods, there isn't a kid that I don't get around to be able to I don't get the opportunity to get around and just check in individually, not about what we're learning about and the subject that we're learning about that necessarily, just mainly to check in with like how they're doing in life and, and just
Right.
what they're interested in right then, and just those little things that otherwise that, if you're in that regular Pavlov's, here's the bell, new group coming in, here's the bell, new group coming in,
Yeah.
and you're repeating the same curriculum over and over and over.
Yeah.
I don't teach the same class twice ever in an entire year, which is really cool. Where when I was going through my teaching program, I was in health and PE, and so it was much more standard one where taught health first period, taught health second period, taught health third period, taught the same lesson first period, taught the same one second period, taught the same one third period. And so usually second period was awesome because you make those mistakes first period and you figure out what to do differently. And then third period, you kind of burned out. So it's not quite as much fire as you had that second period.
Yeah.
But
I feel that.
The cool thing with mine is it's kind of like you get one shot, one kill. So sometimes it's awesome. Sometimes you miss. So, and that's the challenge too, is those days as a teacher, which is really nice. And the standard one where you only have them for 70 minutes, 80 minutes. Like, so if you're off, you get a reset, you get to try again. And with these guys, it's like, you're off at 9:30. Well, you better figure it out because they're with you till 2. So
and they can tell.
Oh, and they can tell. And and the coolest thing with the kids that I have, a lot of them have come to that place because they've had experiences with school that they just are not enjoying the traditional model. So a lot of them are really looking for authenticity, and that's like, they actually don't mind if you're off, if you're like authentic. I'll tell them sometimes, like, I don't know what's going on. Like, this is not, I'm just off right now. You communicate with them and they appreciate that. And then, sometimes we'll just scrap what we're doing because it's not working and it's not how it was intended. And we'll go in a different direction that fits the group and where we're at better. And one of the cool things about teaching now, if your district allows it, is that the standards really give you freedom because you're teaching standards. You're not handcuffed to a curriculum. The problem with schools, as I see it, is so many districts handcuff teachers to a particular curriculum, which then may or may not be reflective of who that person is. And if you're not authentically teaching your curriculum to kids, they see through it like that. And it means nothing, as opposed to when you can be someone, not even be someone's favorite teacher, but if you're authentic, like, they're going to be willing to sit in there more often than not and listen to it. And they're more often not going to get something from it because you're going to inspire them because you care. So maybe I should probably look at this a little bit more. Right. And if they respect you and really like you, then they really want to, like, if they're not getting it, then they'll come up and ask you about it a little bit. Right. If you're kind of like lit up and excited about it.
That
and
relationship.
So, and so I just, I don't know if I wasn't teaching what I'm teaching now and where I'm teaching now, if I wasn't able to find a school similar to what I'm doing now, I don't know if I would teach the traditional way. I just go to a school and teach traditionally anymore. I think, I'd try to figure out a way. If I was going to do that, I'd want to be a substitute teacher because I think that would be awesome. I think when I retire, that's my plan, is just, I think that would be great. Because then again, it's just about relationships. You just come into a classroom, connect with the kids. Have real conversations with them. You got a lesson plan that you didn't have to write. Just get through it. So that's my plan, is after I retire, is to ride that into the sunset as long as I can. God, those kids are lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have them. They make it fun because I listen to my colleagues sometimes, and some of them are not having fun. And so there's not a day usually that goes by that I don't have something that happens that keeps it exciting and keeps me on my toes. And so teaching's hard. Super hard. I way underestimated the challenges I had. I had a lot of hubris going into it, thinking I'll get this figured out because my mom was a teacher forever and she made it look really easy. So I was like, this can't be that hard, right? My mom can do it. But it's definitely not for everyone, as you find out. And it is definitely one that you have to, excuse me, you have to find almost some sort of thing in it that's above just a paycheck. It can't just be a job for you. Otherwise it won't last, because you have to get something more than just a paycheck, because the paycheck isn't worth it. Like all that you go through,
And it won't benefit the kids.
It won't benefit the kids.
Yeah.
But I mean, just for instance, like this year alone, start of the year, one of my colleagues that I worked with for 7 years died of cancer. We had a student commit suicide.
Holy shit.
We had 2 students on campus attempt suicide. And so like, this is all like stuff that
this
school year. This is all
my
stuff that
God.
peripherally, like our school community has been dealing with, our teachers have been dealing with. So not only are you teaching, you're a counselor to kids, you're helping kids who have lost, like some of them lost their best friends. We had one of them lost their brother, right? Like, you know what I mean? And
Right.
so
Right.
it's you're helping parents who have lost children or who are scared that their children might fall, you know what I mean? And so
Right.
the idea of just being able to clock in, go to work, clock out, like those jobs are really appealing in that sense. Cause you know, and then, you know, then that doesn't even count like the kid that you hear about that, you know, is becoming homeless this weekend because they're getting kicked out of their house. Right. Or that, you know, their parents are being abusive. But when you mandatory reported it, nothing happened. So it only got worse. Right. So those are the things that you carry as a teacher that isn't reflected in the paycheck, isn't reflected usually in the movies about teachers or the comedy shows about teachers and those sorts of things. The you know, the kids that you just see the train wrecks happening and you just can't, the helplessness that you feel when you can't do it because they're not your kids, and just the connection that you get with them because you feel like they're your kids, but they're not your kids. So it's, you care about them like they're your kids, but you also have to have that reality of like, there's a separation there. And so you have to watch train wrecks happen that you don't really have control of, where you can do the best you can, but if ultimately there's only so much you can do.
You can't let your emotions hinder you from hurting this other kid who really needs you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And and that's one of the biggest challenges. And then it's all that self-doubt of what could I have done more? Could I have done anything differently to connect with that kid or help them through that situation? And that stuff just eats at you at times. And so.
And I know your mom was an amazing teacher, but it's harder today.
Yeah. I think the support from the administration, I think, is different than it was. I think there's a lot less community at schools. I think there's a lot more bureaucracy, and it's a lot more corporatized, where there's a lot more administrations looking at themselves as CEOs and managers of teachers rather than as part of a school community. And as like the patriarchal or matriarchal figure of a school, and looking at it as like a family piece of it. They're looking at themselves more as CEOs now, or superintendents as CEOs of the business part of it, and, which in turn impacts the kids, impacts the teachers, impacts the school community. Because I know for myself, the minute I start feeling like someone's trying to be top-down authority on me, my first instinct is to push back and to figure out how can I sabatage this person, to rage against the machine. And so like I have to fight that back a lot. Right. And so I've gone through, I think I'm on my like 4th administrators. And so I've seen the full transition into this new model from like the guy that hired me. Jeff Schlecht was one of the most amazing men I've ever met in my life. And into where, and just transition after transition from that, and turnover after turnover from that. And so it has become much more of a business feel than it is of a family feel with teaching now.
Yeah.
And that's challenging because it's really hard to compartmentalize that and bring your game from the kids are sitting in front of you, and not, or if you have like an interaction with an administrator or you know that stuff that's going on at school and that you find out about before school, and then the kids walk in, it's really hard to sometimes just to put that in the back and then just not to carry that too, and
Right.
not be fully present for the kids and be distracted. And so that's one of the challenges now too. I feel like that. I don't know if my mom had that. I don't remember talking about it nearly as much. I remember talking
Right.
about a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with towards the latter part of her, kind of what I was like, I think it's time to retire.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of people our parents' age who felt that way. Like
Yeah.
they could see it coming and they're just
got out before it
Yeah.
turned into that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ashland's really lucky to have you. The world's really lucky to have you as a teacher.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And it makes me think about when the cops were busting the party at Normal Street and you were playing "Fuck the Police" on the stereo.
I still have that I still have that in me. Still teach from that place.
Yeah, no, and the kids are lucky to get that.
Yeah.
It's a crazy world out there.
It is, and it's so hard because it's so politicized, and both sides are just so mean and cruel to each other and to the other side, and it's so easy to other somebody.
Neither side's right.
No, and if you're not seeing the other side as a human being that's just trying to make it in life too, then you're missing it.
Yeah.
Right. And that we're all just trying to survive on this spinning rock. And if you don't get that, you're missing it. And so, yeah, it's one of the things that I really stress with the kids too, is that, is that things are changing. Teaching's crazy. For instance, like we, 3 weeks ago, we got these emails about like these new AI apps that are coming out that literally
I was about to ask you about that Chat GPT and what's the other one? Something 3.5. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and it's these new AI apps that you just give it a topic and it'll type out an essay for you. Give it a topic, it'll bump out a poem for you, and it's, it's not an A paper, but it's a C.
Yeah.
If you're just trying to get it done. Yeah. And it's done with AI, so you can put it in turnitin.com, and it's not replicated and it's not plagiarized. It's all new. And so
I actually I made an account last night.
Yeah.
I was watching TikTok.
Yeah.
And a Jordan Peterson video came on there, and he's like talking about how he's talking about the Chat GPT, and he put in there something about like his book written in someone's voice, and within 3 seconds it wrote an essay for him.
Yeah.
And kids can do this. Kids are going to figure this out fast.
Kids are doing it.
Yeah.
They already are. They already are. Like my colleague's son goes to school at Lane, and he said, "Yeah, Dad, we use that."
Yeah.
And so and kids are already using it. And so again, I just try to emphasize the kids, we have our class rules written up on our board, and they're not like normal class rules. It's things like energy in equals energy out.
It's a good one.
Be excellent. Show up, right? And just be present, right?
Yeah.
And so patterns equal power is another one.
That's a good one.
And those are just like the ones that we have, and they sit in the front of the room, and the kids look at them. And so
that goes so much farther than most kids realize. Like just seeing those messages on the board and like reading those every day, like that.
And we
that
just I talk about them, this is how you survive life. This is how you survive school, because it all sucks. If you don't make it good, it's gonna suck. Life is hard. Everything you love is going to die, and that's a heavy thing to accept.
Yeah.
So why not? Why not? Enjoy the time you have. You don't know when it's going to be gone. You don't know when the people you love's time is going to be gone.
Yeah.
So you may as well put energy into making the time you have here the best you can. Because if you just sit passively, it's just going to click by, and you're going to be one step closer to that final stage, right? Yeah. And I talk to the kids about it. It's like, you can go to school and sit in class and play games and use this app and pull one over on your teacher. But ultimately, guess what? In 4 years, your teacher's still going to be here, and you're going to be out on your own.
Yeah.
And no one's going to be laughing.
Yeah.
Except, you're not joking. You're not pulling a joke on anybody.
Yeah.
Except yourself, that you think you're pulling it, because all your grades are in school, really. Some kind of, it's partially reflective of intelligence, but it's far more reflective of your ability to play the game.
Yeah. That's
and
for
and
sure.
to navigate systems, right?
Yeah.
And there's going to be games and systems that you're going to have to navigate your entire life. So learning where and how to play it so that you can get the things that you want out of school or out of whatever it is really important. So if you don't care about grades, that's really freeing, because then you just got to do enough to get by and get through and to get to graduation. If you want to get an A, if you really like English, get an A in English class and let these other classes that you don't care about, that you know you're not going to use, be fine with the C and just get through it and enjoy your life if that's what you want to do. If you want to get straight A's, then know you're going to have to work your butt off and go do that, right? And so, but the energy you put in is what you're going to get out of it. So you can't think you're going to sit there passively and everything's going to work out for you.
Right.
And I tell them and that part of what the stuff that we talk about in class, present all these different ways of philosophies and ways of thinking about the world and life and your experience and your journey through it. Because I talked to him about, when I was sitting in their seat, I had the romantic idea that it was just everything was going to get easier and better when I got out of high school. I didn't have to do this crap, right? And then you get out of high school and you realize it doesn't get any easier. Some ways it gets harder, right? Because you get less and less support around you to help you through these things. But what you do get better at as you get older, if you've been paying attention, is you get better at handling those tough situations and you're navigating those hard things. And if you're paying attention and you're reflecting on the L's that you've taken in the past, it helps you not repeat that in the future, right? But you have to have that time of metacognition where you're thinking about, why am I doing this? Why am I making these decisions I'm making and I'm not liking these outcomes and they keep happening? I mean, that's the patterns equal pattern, power, right? It's if you recognize patterns, then you can change things or you can hedge them off before they happen, right? And so and then we talk about how those apply to our class and getting things done in our class, but they apply to your relationships too. Like when you decide to have a relationship with a friend or a lover, energy in equals energy out. What you put into that relationship is what you're going to get out of it. Be excellent in your relationship, show up in your relationship and be present. So they're all applicable to all sorts of things. And so constantly come back to that and remind them of those sorts of things.
The challenges never stop.
No, they just pile up. And the reality is that it's like we were talking about, life's not fair at all. And that's a crappy realization.
You were talking to Zozel about that earlier.
Yeah. And it's just life isn't fair and it sucks that it's not, but that's the reality. And the sooner you accept that is that you're going to have some ups and you're going to have some downs. And unfortunately, some people have lives where they're going to catch a lot more L's than they're not, but you can endure it and you can find the silver lining in all of it too. And when you're catching those L's, and if you learn from it, you can find the pattern that led you there and change it if you want to. So.
I look at my parents and they're old, early to mid 70s, and they're set. They make more money from their retirement than they spend each month. They have property. They're set. You know what I mean? But they stress more than I do. And I'm not set.
Exactly.
They're stressing more than I do. So it's the human condition. That's just the way the human brain works. You're gonna be stressed about your challenges your entire life. So what's your mindset going into it, and what do you want, and what do you expect from life, and the way that you're preparing these kids just seems exceptional. It's really good for them.
Well, and just selfishly, a lot of what I teach though is for myself too. It's a reminder for myself, right? I benefit from everything I get, and it's what keeps me inspired to teach them. That is that it just is that constant reminder. I constantly think through and reflect on and connect to the books that we read in class, or a line from a book comes into my brain when something comes up that's happened to me, or that's that one thing that we talk about in class. And I need to remember that when it comes up. And so it just constantly is running me, because the books that I read with my kids are all books that I have had heavy impact on me as a human being. And they were all chosen with that behind it, and so that they were impactful. And my colleagues the same way. They were books that when they were in high school that had profound impact on them, or that we've come into as adults that were kind of rocked us, and that And then it's ironic. There's a guy I listened to, Lex Friedman. I don't know if you know who that is.
No, Lex Friedman's man. Yeah.
Okay, so he just
yeah.
recently released his book list for 2023. He wants to read a book a week for the entire year, and he listed off his book and of like the.
I need to check that out.
I think it's more than he's actually going to end up reading more than a book a year. But so of like the 30 plus books that he has like listed out, I think, and he's a pretty smart dude.
He's really smart. Engineer, right?
He's
an engineer
yeah. Works at MIT. Yeah. And so I was pretty stoked because of the books, like 18 of the books on that list were books that we use in our curriculum or have used in our curriculum.
Out of 30?
Yeah. And so like a lot of the books that are on there are ones that we're using in our class in some way, whether it's a standalone chapter, we're reading the novel, we've read the novel in the past, and so it's what we try to talk to the kids is like, none of this stuff is really new. And that's the beauty of like philosophy is that you see is like smart people all kind of think about the same thing to general ideas. They all have different nuances about it, but for the most part, big ideas, these big good ideas are out there and they've been out there and most people are thinking about them.
Yeah.
And building off of them.
Yeah.
But there are these accepted good concepts that exist in the world that all smart people build off of and understand and utilize. And so trying to help them see that. And it's kind of cool when we've read a book in class and then they see it referenced on a TV show or in the news or in pop culture of some sort, or a parent or their friends talking about it. Have numerous parents that will read the books that we're reading in class with their kids.
They do,
yeah. It's
That's
really
awesome.
cool.
Yeah.
And so, and some of them, they talk about how their kids come home and talk about the books with them. It's at like dinner and stuff. They've never done that before, and that they have these great conversations. The Road is one that a lot of parents will read, like, because the kids like really get into it. And one of the cool things that we do differently is that when I was going through the teaching program and coaching, I recognized that when I was in high school, when kids are assigned books to read at home, they don't often read them. They read Spark Notes, or they just blow it off and copy their friend's work and get the summary before class and then go in and try to jam out the test or the quiz. And so we read all of the books that we read in class aloud. So I read them to them, and then we stop and we discuss it while we're in the story, right? And so if they have questions, they raise their hand and ask questions to clarify what's going on. They're always for each, like, we read usually a chapter or two a day, depending on the book and the length of the chapters. But they'll pull out like 5 to 7 passages that they like from the reading that we do, and then they'll write about them and reflect on them, and then we'll share it and talk about like things that came up with it in the story in that chapter. But they all were able to read some really complex books with otherwise that would be above kids' reading comprehension. But because of the way that we're doing it, they're reading those books that Lex Friedman they're reading Metamorphosis, they're reading Cormac McCarthy, they're reading some of these Gogol, they're reading these kind of high level writing, and it's accessible to them because of the way that we do it and the way that we're discussing. And it's really cool when they get lit up when they come back after like a weekend and somebody was talking about something that we read and they knew what to say to them and they talked about them. And we had a really cool opportunity. We read Metamorphosis with at the same time the AP Lit class was reading it, and we were able to go in and do it. And at the time, the AP Lit teacher, she's one of our friends, and she's really her son's in my class, so she's really pro alt ed as well. And she really likes what we're doing up there, and she knows that we're doing some good stuff. And we were able to do a mashup where we were able to bring our alt ed kids into the AP Lit class, and they were able to have a conversation about Metamorphosis, Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis, and it was awesome. And
you dominated her.
No, not that, but my students, one of the things they talked about is they were surprised that some of the kids hadn't actually read the book.
Oh.
They didn't know what the story was about because they had it sent home and a couple of them had blown it off. And so when they were in their group circles, they didn't know what the kids were talking about when they were talking about it. And so it was cool because she came at it from the AP Lit side and was able to talk about like the language use and the structure of the writing and like why it's an important piece of literature. And then we were able to bring in like a lot of the pop culture stuff about it, like, and so it was really cool. We're bringing in The Simpsons, and then we did the same thing with The Stranger, and it was really cool. A lot of like the AP Lit kids didn't know that The Stranger, that Queen wrote Bohemian Rhapsody is based on The Stranger.
I don't know
Albert
this.
Camus' The Stranger. And
Really?
Yeah, it's his telling of The Stranger, which is really cool.
What's The Stranger?
So it's a book by Albert Camus. He's a French philosopher, and it's a phenomenal book. But that's another one that they were reading in AP Lit, and we went in there, and it was cool because they hadn't talked about like its references in pop culture and how it's used. It also was used as the basis of Seinfeld's season finale of the whole series. Yeah. And so, you watch Seinfeld?
Like a little bit.
So the premise of the time in the 90s, right? So The Stranger ultimately is about this man who ultimately kills this person and has no emotion about it. He's very flat. And so he's a stranger in the fact that like, he doesn't care, right? Yeah. Sociopathic being a stranger, right? Yeah. So fast forward to the 90s, Seinfeld, they've had their 13, 15 seasons or whatever. They come to their season finale, so they redo The Stranger. Well, their sociopathic redoing of The Stranger and the absurdity of what would make someone a stranger amongst the citizenry of humans is that they sit by and film a crime happen rather than intervene. And in the 90s, how that was considered so outlandish that someone would sit and film something while someone was being accosted and not intervene and do something about it.
And that's what we do all the time now.
And now there's multiple YouTube channels that's all it is just watching people get wrecked, people saying by and just watching it happen. World Star. And so it was just wild to see like the progress of it and stuff. But it was cool to like be able to bring that piece into like the AP Lit class and work with the AP Lit teacher Kimberly and have her with our kids, because they felt really good after that. They were able to go in there because they were often intimidated by those kids because they're the smart kids, right, in school. And so they gave them a sense of kids. Or the kids that just like
not the dumb kids.
No, but they never identify. They don't identify themselves as having a lot of success in school and being able to have a lot of success in school for whatever reason. And so it was really cool to see them come back pretty empowered from that and being like, oh, we actually know some stuff. And so it was kind of cool. And just getting to light those little fires is kind of addicting. And that's where I kind of was talking about, you got to find that thing higher than the paycheck in teaching. And it's those little things like that. The kids calling me after they graduate and checking in, or, being my disc golf partner. Those are the things that make it almost like a spiritual practice for me. So it's like there's something not in like a woo-woo way, but it's more like it helps me justify like all of the stuff that I take on, like outside of like that heartache and all those things that I have to carry and stuff that make the paycheck worth it, is because I get more out of it. I get to see those kids feel like they actually can do something when they hadn't before. Or the kid that talks about that they're the first person to graduate in their family, right? Like that's a pretty awesome thing to help a kid get to do for the first time. And so, it's not reflected in my paycheck, but I get to take that home to go sleep at night. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. You don't take your paychecks with you.
No.
In the end.
No. And they go really fast.
My money disappears fast. I don't know about yours. But you have a nice house, so yours probably goes faster.
It disappears fast. I don't know how people make it work. It doesn't. It's wild.
It just seems like it works.
Yeah.
It either works or it doesn't.
Yeah.
You either find a way or you don't.
And it's funny. It's one of those things like my Kat and I constantly are talking about, like, money is such an easy thing. I mean, there's a certain level that you have to make sure your basic needs are being met. But then there's also this level of stress that it creates after that base level that's so unnecessary that it's so easy to fall trapped to. Like, I need these things, I need this, I need that to be happier, to be comfortable. And the less if we can get to that point where the less of that we need, the happier we're going to get. Because it's that base level. A lot in my circle, a lot of the people that I see really stressing and always stressed out about money, they're far beyond that base level of need.
Yeah.
The stress is self-induced, and they're stressing about things that they really don't need to stress about. They're choosing to stress about. And then there's people that are having to stress out about things because that base level is not there. And so it just constantly putting myself in check, and reminding myself to be grateful for the things that I have, because there's so many people that are struggling and that have it so much harder than I do. And it's that being a teacher, I'm constantly reminded of that too. Constantly humbled by learning about things about students, and then just awestruck that they walk through my door.
Right.
And that they've mustered up a smile or a laugh.
They're even there.
I've had this kid for about a year now. They came in halfway through last year. I met them, and then they're a little dingbat freshman, just a little goofy person, and they shared this last piece we did, vignette writing, where they were writing about things, and he wrote about being homeless. I had no idea that because he's not now, but I had no idea that he had experienced this. And he was telling me about his parents' struggles while he was homeless, his parents' struggles with addiction, and his dad's struggle with bipolar. And I was just thinking, like, oh my God. And he talked about how many times they had to move, and then but that all these times were so difficult and challenging, but he's so thankful because now his parents are both recovered, and they're both productive members of society, and that they're both doing really well, and that he wouldn't change it because it's where his love of nature grew, is because he was outside all the time, and so he used his imagination, and that his memories growing up, it really, like, he learned how to hunt, and he learned how to fish, and he learned how to kind of fend for himself out in nature, and that regardless of what happens to him, that he's going to forever love it because of that experience. And I was just like, I had to tell him, I was just like, man, like, I had no idea that you were carrying this around, and that in itself is a testament, because it doesn't reflect on you, because you have every reason to be angry. You have every reason to have a chip on your shoulder, to
feel insecure,
to feel nihilistic, and he doesn't. He's jovial. He's always laughing. He's plugged into the school community. He's through his challenges with, like, learning different things. He just keeps grinding, and his grit is unbelievable getting through there. And super stoked he found wrestling this year, and so he's loving that and thriving in that. And so it's been awesome. And so but that's just like an anecdote of, like, one thing. So I constantly find these things about kids that just, like, dumbfound me, that, like, I had no idea that kid was carrying that around, and it doesn't impact them. And it impacts them, but they don't carry that forefront, and it doesn't negatively make them interact with me or the world or their peers as it does for some people. Right. And they're choosing not to let that define them. And it's inspiring when I'm sitting there moaning about something that's going on in my life, and I'm like, all right, perspective. So I'm constantly humbled by the kids when I'm teaching, and it's super good. And that's, again, as I mentioned with, like, the spirituality piece, I think that's an important part of spirituality, is that being humbled, and whether, and so that is a big piece too, is that humbleness of, like, holy cow. And these are just, like, little kids, right? And it's
these guys are so young.
They're so young, but they're just such awesome little humans. And it's just like, wow. There's more grit in some of them than some of the adults I know, right? And kindness and goodness, and just the ability to keep getting back up when you get knocked down, and not cry about it, and just to keep enduring through it, and then to be okay asking for help when you need help. And that's like
these kids are incredible.
Yeah, it's so I'm just so fortunate to have that job that I stumbled into.
Did you choose that job, or was it destined?
Upon my birthday. It was just absolute luck. I got my student teaching assignment was at Ashland High School. I was a health and PE major coming out of college. And so my fall and spring placement was at Ashland High School, and my winter placement was at McLaughlin Middle School for PE. So I had health in the fall and the spring and PE in the winter. And so my CT that I was put with that year at Ashland, they piloted what was called the SAGE program that became the Thoreau program that I teach now. And it was started out as just a health class, because health is one of the health class is one of the areas where you find out a lot about students and some of the stuff that they've gone through in their life, and the kids that are really not comfortable talking about family, or they're not comfortable talking about sexual assault because they've had experiences with that, or whatever, drug abuse, whatever it is. Health class can bring up a lot of red flags for kids that okay, we check in on this kid about this or that. And
health's kind of passed off as the not very important class a lot of times.
Yes, absolutely. And so we recognize that these kids were not having success in the regular health class. So we kind of identified 13 kind of like the ones that we felt were kind of like the hardest cases of them. And we put them into one class in the morning. We made it first period, and there was 13 of them in there. And for my action research that you have to do in there, I started finding out, and all of them were on free and reduced lunch, or all of them, but maybe one were on free and reduced lunch. But then upon investigating, none of them were eating food at school because they were embarrassed to go get it because they were on free and reduced lunch. So I started going in the morning and just picking up 2 huge like bowls of the food from the cafeteria and just bringing it up into the classroom. So it was in there when they came into health class. So it was all food that they would have had access to and gotten on their free and reduced lunch down the cafeteria, but it just took out that awkwardness of having to go up and get it for free, right? And
so when you go grab that food, everyone knows that you're free and reduced lunch.
Or, well, you're just standing in line, and some kids are paying with money, and some kids just plug in their number and just go, right? And so it's like it's like everything, right? Far less people care than you think, but if you're going through that, you think everybody's watching, right? And and rather than put myself in that, I'm just not going to eat, right? And so then they're coming to school hungry. And so I started picking up these breakfasts with my CT, and we started bringing them in there, and the kids started showing up, and they were eating all of the food because they were all hungry. And then and then we got them talking about their lives and what they were going on. And because they weren't the only kid that had that type of experience, that other kids were sharing similar stuff, then they opened up and they were willing to talk about the hardships that they were going through. And so we recognized that that was really successful. And then we said, well, maybe it's impacting other classes too. So we took those 13 kids, and then we kind of created that program, like 3-period block where they did English, social, their core classes, right? Except for math. And then started taking them on field trips. And it was really awesome because at that time, there weren't really any state standards for graduation, anything connected to, there were standards, but they weren't connected to graduation. Kids weren't having to pass a standardized test to meet graduation requirements. And so, but when the state did that, then they had to be passing English and math, right? And so, and math has become the big hang up for a lot of kids with the standardized tests. And so it just, when we took out their core classes, it took a lot of stress off. And those core classes are the ones that a lot of kids end up having the most homework, English, social studies, and when kids don't have stable homes to go home to, it's hard to expect them to have places to do homework. And so we designed the class so that it was like a job. You show up, the work is in class. You're not expected to take it home unless you blow off and don't use the whole day that we have together, and you screw around, then you might have to take some homework home. If you decide
if you have any homework, it's on you.
If you decide not to show up, then you're going to have homework. But if you show up and you work hard in class, you want the class is designed for kids not to have homework, that they can focus on math homework And then if they have an elective that they take, then they can do the homework in there, but it greatly reduces their homework load.
Yeah.
And that was super successful. And then from then on, it was basically that started that program. The Catalyst program had always existed. And so after that first year, the woman who was teaching the Catalyst program left. And so I applied for that job. And so I got hired part-time as the 11th, 12th grade teacher. And there was the sophomores that I had in that first year of health became juniors, and some of them came into that Catalyst class. So I was like, I got to have some of them in class too. And so that's when that started. And then in 2008, the district had budget crisis. So I got riffed part-time down to part-time again. And again, like speaking to like administration and stuff, I spoke about the man that hired me, Jeff Schlecht. Like I was talking about like the human versus like that top-down like approach. I remember him like coming in like tears in his eyes as he's telling me that he's having to do this, right? Where now in education, it feels like you're just a number in a column that like, okay, well, it doesn't fit here, so let's just move it over here. And like, you know, without any real care or thought of like how this might impact your family or impact, you know, everything else. And so, and then, so, but he, so I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to teach at Ashland, right? Because there's no jobs. And so, but then he piecemealed, ended up by the end of the year, I ended up getting back to full time because he was able to cobble some classes for me. And he really wanted me around. And so then a couple years later, the Thoreau job opened up and I was able to apply for that. And so then I'm the full-time alt ed. So I have one day I do the 9th, 10th, one day I do the 11th, 12th. And then the day I'm doing 9th, 10th, we have another guy that teaches a different 11th and 12th class, and then vice versa. When I'm doing my 11th, 12th graders, there's a lady, Jen Wapapa, that teaches another 9th, 10th grade class. So there's 2 of each section. So there's 2 Catalyst classes, 2 Thoreau classes. Okay. So I have 2 different colleagues that I work with in the alt ed program. And so there's 3 of us. You all
kind of work together.
Yeah. And so, both classes, we read the same books. We teach them differently because we all are, you know, we all teach from our different styles, but we kind of have like the skeletons are all the same that we use for our days and how we structure the class. And they saved me in the profession through COVID. Like I would not be teaching if, I don't know how people are still teaching after COVID and teaching through Zoom school. That was the worst thing ever.
Well, good for you. Good for them. I mean, thank God for all that.
No, it was.
I have one final question.
All right.
We're going deep here. What happens when we die?
It's a good question. I think our energy joins up with everybody else. We just are there. We're out there and we're in everything that, you know, that's why you live to make impacts on people. Because I think that, you know, that cliche, I don't think you fully die until the last person stops remembering you. So I think your legacy lives on in the things and the memories that people have of you, the things you build and leave behind, and the way that you influence and impact people. Your kids carry you on, you know. I think that we're all connected in that piece. And so I think everybody that we touch in our lives carries pieces of us. And if we positively influence them, then we're going to remind them, they're going to remember us to a degree, and that will keep us living on. Or are we just lights out?
Yeah.
And that's it.
It's a good nap, right?
Yeah, it's a long nap.
Yeah. Yeah.
But either way, I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I hope it's just like an infinite DMT, just cannon shot.
I agree. Yeah. I think there's a hopeful part of me that there's going to be something real fun at the end.
Yeah. I mean, I love the idea of like, you know, all the different, like, I love all the different ideas that people have of what it could be. Like, I love like the idea of heaven's beautiful. I love the idea that the Vikings have, that your heaven's going to have war for the rest of eternity, drinking and having war. Like that's wild. Like, just the different ways that you end up in paradise. And there's all these different things, like the way that you end up it's kind of cool how we've created these things and no one knows, right?
Yeah, no one knows.
it's cool. My dad ended up getting diagnosed with cancer, and when he was doing that, they had to stop his heart, right? And so, like, I've had some cool conversations with him, like, what was that like?
They stopped his heart.
Yeah, he had to stop his heart and then tap it back up and get it re-going because while they were doing the surgery on him and stuff.
Yeah.
And so, and he's a religious person, and so, it lived out to his expectation. He saw some lights and all those. So he talks about seeing like lights, and
He did.
Yeah, he talks about like it's aligned with a lot of like with what he was hoping, and so it's cool that he had that peaceful mind. And I will say that everybody I've talked to that knows someone has reported it, or the people I know who have had experiences where their hearts have stopped and they've come back, they all walk through life with a different appreciation now. That's the one common thing I know. They all have different ideas of where they end up, but like, so it's just that reminder of appreciating the time that we have here, because you never know when that light's going out for the people that we love and ourselves.
Yeah. No, in my beliefs, it's either going to be really awesome or it's going to be a nice long nap.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. The things you've shared are amazing. This is awesome. I'm really happy we've been able to talk, and I hope we can talk again. And this has been great.
I have no idea how this is going to come off because
I don't care.
Yeah, I know. That was the beauty of it. I just had fun talking with you. It's so nice talking with you.
We haven't had a long talk for a long time. So
we had a lot of them in college.
Yeah.
Lots of nights.
Yeah.
Long conversations.
I love you, man. This is great.
Absolutely. Love you too.
Look forward to all the great times in the future.
Thank you so much for having me on here and giving me this opportunity to share that and get that out there. Yeah. Thank you.
We'll talk to you again.
Absolutely.